Hello and welcome. I'm RiverSoft Art, and I'm here today to talk about my new product, Character Converter from Genesis 3 Female to Genesis 8 Female. And I will discuss what it is, how to use it, and these tutorials will also apply to the Character Converter, the upcoming product, Character Converter from Genesis 3 Male to Genesis 8 Male, and any follow-on products. So what exactly is this? This is a product for converting the morphs that make up a Genesis 3 female character to Genesis 8 male. So here in this image, we have Victoria 7 and we have a converted Victoria 7 for Genesis 8 female. So these converted characters have all of the advantages of Genesis 8 female, the improved expressions, and can use any of the Genesis 8 clothings, etc. And in fact, it's a true Genesis 8 female. If you wanted to use Genesis 3 female clothing, you would have to autofit just like a normal Genesis 8 female. So here, for example, is the Victoria 7, and the Character Converter converts the morphs, the icons that are used for the character presets, the categories so it shows up in smart content, and even can convert the default materials loaded with the Genesis 3 character. So here on the left is Victoria 7 with her default materials, and then Victoria 7 for Genesis 8 that's been through the conversion. So with Genesis 3 characters that are kind of the standard ones that are from DAZ Studio, you may have problems with seams or with misaligned seams. So this is a converted Girl 7, and it copied over the materials, but you have these ugly seams. So if you get this product, you can actually use the materials for the original Genesis 3 female characters with your converted Genesis 3 or Genesis 8 characters. And all you have to do is go to the surfaces, look for the UV set, and change it to what you need. So Girl 7. And there you go. Voila. It looks very good. So, converted it, and with the materials. So let's close that. Let's go on. So how to use this? So it's very, very simple to use. It's designed to be simple to use. Basically, the converter will allow you to load a Genesis 3 character, find what morphs are being used by that to make its shape of its body and its head, and then automatically convert them, create your character presets, and you have them available to you. So in here, I've converted my library, and these are all converted different characters. Arabella 7 for Genesis 8, Bethany, etc., etc. So let's go back to the character converter. How do you use it? Well, you start it up. You can have it's going to delete the scene, so you can either, save your scene or create a new scene. It will do it for you. So you just need to be careful about that. If you bring it up, it comes up with this tab usually at the front. The first thing you want to do is set the character output directory. This is the directory where the character presets go, not the morphs. The morphs go somewhere else, and I'll discuss that in a moment. But where the character presets go. So you would usually go under your for Windows, it's my documents, basically my content library, and I've created a folder for people. This would be for Genesis 8 female, and I created a characters directory, and this is what I would select as the output directory. Now what you can do is actually add the characters you want to convert. The easiest way is with the add directory. So this, you would go to your Genesis 3 female directory. So go under My Des 3D Library, go to People, go to Genesis 3 female, and go to Characters, and select this folder. And what happens here is that the script will automatically scan all of the files in this directory and any subdirectories and look for ones that the metadata tells it is a character actor, is a character preset. And it screens out any other files. So if there are materials or shape presets, it's only character presets. Now, some users have, their DAZ Studio has an issue where the metadata that's being reported for files is wrong. If you look at the log, what you will see, let me go back to the top, is that it's adding this directory. It will skip this file because it's of type preset materials RSL. And it keeps going through all these files. And let's get down to when it actually adds. A lot of files under here. Mostly, so there, like adding an actor character, and this one is the 3D Universe's Little Ones African Female. So those are the files it's looking at. It can't convert shape presets because what this script does is actually load the character and then convert the morphs over. The shape presets are expecting a character in the scene, but the script, does not do that. It clears out a screen before converting each character. It loads the character you want to convert, and it goes from there. So it needs these actor character. There's another script that I'm going to show you that can handle, shape presets and other things for converting custom characters, basically the character that you have in your scene. So it goes through all of these and looks for these. Some users, as I mentioned, will have a problem and it will come back and say no new files detected. You need to look at the log, and what you'll probably see is something like skipping, and this will be blank between these quotes. That means the metadata for that ob file is wrong. So what you need to do in that case, if you know that this is a character preset and I need to add it, you need to go to the options, turn off check content type when adding files. What that allows is you to use the other button, the add files button, and add one directly. And it will basically, ignore that whether it had the correct metadata or not. So you need to know what you're doing. You have to make sure that these are actually character actors. In this case, obviously it is. But that's the way you can get around that. You can also use the add files. Let's clear out. It can take a while if you have a large library to use the add directory. By using add files, you could go up to this one and not worry about going into all these subdirectories. Basically just saying, okay, I want from here to here. Let's look at all of these. And it goes through and it sees which ones are available. And actually, let me clear that and redo that. I just want to show that. I want to show something with that. Do that again. So this is a fast way to add characters. And let's see if any of them were skipped. So, yeah, so here there's a meta problem with the Annika Demon that's considered an actor file. So I could add that separately. And here's one that's saying it's a character file. This is Athana, however you pronounce it. So these files, I would say, oh, I need to change I would add those by turning off the check content type and using add files if you needed to add those. Now, sometimes, all right, well, actually, getting ahead of myself. So at this point, you've loaded in all the characters you'd like to convert. If you just click execute, the script will start at the top, go through, convert each one, and if it converts it, it'll uncheck it and go to the next one, etc., etc. If there's a problem with a file, it will actually skip it and leave it checked. This execute always starts from the beginning of the file. Now, however, if you're like, oh, I only want to convert from cadence on, I could select cadence and then hit execute from selected, and it would do that one and go on. Another thing you can do is that you can just select like these four and say convert items. So this will convert all selected, and you could use the control, and checked characters. So if I uncheck this one, this would only convert cadence and Camden if I hit convert items. And occasionally, because of that metadata problem, even loading the characters, they can be problems. What you will need to do with those is select them and use the force convert item. So this should work, but it's not guaranteed. But it will basically say, okay, you've told me this is a character, and I'm going to try and convert it, no matter what the metadata tells me. So that's how you execute and convert items. If you save, all that does is it saves the list. So if I did something like this and uncheck these and save, now those are unchecked. If I wanted to check them and I canceled, it wouldn't save my changes. So those are still unchecked. So that's the only thing that save and cancel do. After you've added a directory, it's a good idea to just say, okay, let me save this list so I know it's there, especially if it took a long time. Let's see, other options. You can set it up so it stops on errors or continues on error. Stop on error would stop on the very first character that had a problem. In general, I recommend just setting it on continue on error and letting it go through and convert as many as you can. And all of them will get unchecked. And then going back and trying to do the problem ones with force convert by selecting it and clicking force convert. This overwrite if the Genesis 8 female file exists is if you were converting the character again to Genesis 8 female, it would overwrite that. It does not control what's happening to the morph. It's only controlling what's happening with the character preset. Let's see. These ignore DASBot files and ignore previously converted files. They control what happens when you add directory. So if you have a ACO 8, it would skip that if it can figure out. Sometimes it can't figure out. Basically, it goes and says, okay, well, let me look for Agnes. And instead of under Genesis 3 female, let me look under Genesis 8 female. So if there was an Agnes for Genesis 8 female, it'd say, okay, I don't want to convert this. I won't even add it to this list here. ACO things with like the 7 are a little bit harder. It wouldn't find it. It would be looking for ACO 7 and Genesis 8 female, and there obviously isn't. So that's those two options. The overwrite existing morphs are after you've started converting characters. So this is only the morphs that are, that have been created through this script. In general, I don't recommend using this. This works, but the way it works is it tells Daz Studio to delete the old ones, and then it converts the character again and writes out the new morphs. And for some reason, Daz takes a while, quite a long time, to delete morphs. So it's actually better to go to your file browser, and basically you look for your morphs under, let me exit out. So I believe it's Yeah, so your content directory, content manager, and the first one that's under your DAZ Studio formats. So that's where your morphs will go. It'll go in, for me, Documents, DAZ 3D Studio, My Library, and then all the morphs go under My Library, Data, DAZ 3D, Genesis 8, Female, Morphs, and then the vendor name and the product name or the character name. So if you want to convert a character, just come in here, delete them all like that. And I would restart DAZ, because if you've loaded the Genesis 8 Female, it might have those morphs in memory. Just to be safe, I'd restart DAZ. I'm going to undo that delete. But that's the faster way. The overwrite works, and I did that to make it simpler, but it's not necessarily as fast. All right, going back into the copy materials is for the character preset. It will copy the materials that are loaded with the character onto the Genesis 8 Female character, which has the morphs and is dialed up to be that character, and then saves that as a character preset. If you turn that off, it doesn't try and do it. The most important option here is the tolerance. So the tolerance is it helps with determining how close the morphs need to be. Some of this is a little confusing to me, but the tolerance is used for calculating the projection when transferring morphs. And it's set as a default of 0.06, which is slightly high. And occasionally what you will have is a problem with characters if you do that. If I go to the manual, you will see stuff like this eye folding under here. If you adjust the tolerance, if you move it down from 0.06 to 0.02 or even lower, 0.005, you can a lot of times get a much better look. So the tolerance is how you fix extreme morphs. So the character converter has no problems with the normal morphs, but extreme characters, occasionally there'll be problems. And if you dial down the tolerance this way, you can get it so it can sometimes handle more extreme characters like Girl 7 or whatever. So that's how you use this one. You would just load in your add directory, you've set your output directory, and you hit execute. The other way of doing this is that you can actually load your custom characters. These could be characters that you've just created the shapes, or you're dialing in morphs or whatever, and it will copy it over. So I'm going to try and load one here, Aria. I'll load in Aria. So let's say you have a custom character. So if you look at her currently used morphs, she has her body, her head, but we're like, oh no, I want to make a vampire Aria. So I went under my shaping tab, and let me dial in some of that. Well, let's not dial it in all the way. And, I want elf ears. Oops, that's the head elf. I want just the ears. There we go. And and maybe some claws for the hands. Where are hands? Feet, claws, sure, why not? And undead claws, hand. So this is your character. So this is the one you want to convert from Genesis 3. If you look at its scene identification, it's Genesis 3 female. So you need to load it up. You need to load in Genesis 8 female. So let's load Genesis 8 female. Oh, I could have loaded that. Oh, well. So at this point, to use the other one, you would select both and double-click to start this. So what would happen is if I haven't selected, it will ask you to please select both. And you need to first select your Genesis 3 female, and then on Windows, it's Control-click to select the Genesis 8 female. I believe it's Command on Mac. And then you double click this and it loads it up. So it will, let's reset. By default, when you hit reset, it pulls in the vendor name from what you put in for your, when you set up DAZ Studio. And so here it's RiverSoft Art. If you I'm assuming it's a custom character. That's a lot of different morphs from a lot of different places. But if it's one that's from, a vendor, you could obviously change it. There's a product name and a character name. The product name is used for the folders I mentioned earlier. And in this case, they would actually go under RiverSoft Art. And the character name is used for the morph, and also when you get on the other when it's converted, the dial you use for the character. So like this one has Aria. The name you give in the character name, you would have a dial, so you can dial in the whole thing, just like this one. Let's put her back. So basically, it's going to go through and convert all of these morphs that are actually used, and it will dial in exactly that. So it'll be 54.4 on the Genesis 8 female side. So you bring it up, you fill it in, product name, you have the tolerance and overwrite existing morphs. I'm going to uncheck that, and you hit accept, and it will convert it. So let's name her Aria Vampire. And this one's a lot faster because it's already loaded in the characters. So we'll wait a second. And at the finish of it, the Genesis 3 female is reset. Basically, it's shaped to the vanilla. It's not quite finished. Sorry, I forgot this does take a few minutes. Right there, it's converting the morphs. So as I mentioned, it copies over the morphs. For this script, it doesn't copy the materials, but it copies over the morphs. It creates a controller property for the character, so you can dial in Aria, or in this case, Aria Vampire. Yeah. And it does take a while. So there we go. So at this point, we can hide the Genesis 3. Here's the Genesis 8. If you look at its Aria Vampire Genesis 8. So if I dial that out, it becomes Genesis 8. And all of these are saved. Going back to RiverSoft Art, under that product name, here's the character name and the ones that it hadn't been converted before. Since I've converted my entire library, there's a lot of, most of morphs are already copied over. So that's where this lives. It does not create a character preset, unlike with the other script. The other script, when you execute it and it goes through this, it will create a large collection of characters. So here's all the characters I've converted over. And these are actually in smart content. So if I wanted to go and look for Victoria, Victoria 7 for Genesis 8. And then of course, because I have that selected, it's only showing that. So these are all the ones based upon Victoria. And we have the Genesis 3 females, the Genesis Victoria 7 and Victoria 7 HD, and the converted, which is Victoria 7 Genesis 8. And you would actually can load that up. Let's clear the scene. Or actually, I'll load up, I'll load up Victoria. I'll load up one of the other ones. Takes a while. Now, the character converter can't convert all products. As I mentioned earlier, extreme morphs are a problem, especially something by like Joe Quick, or can be a lot of issues. I'm converting the Genesis 3 female, Genesis 3 male to Genesis 8 males, and he has some amazing characters, and they have issues. Some of them do. But anyway, so when you actually, it's created, let's clear this out so we can see everything. So if you'll see, there's Agnes Genesis 8 and Agnes, which is the Genesis 3 female. And then ours was created in that directory we set at the beginning, the output directory. Okay, I think that's it. I hope this has been helpful to you. If you have any questions, I am on the forums. There is a thread that will be for different things. So right now, character converter from Genesis 3 female to Genesis 8 female. So if you have other questions, feel free to ask, and I hopefully can answer them to your satisfaction. Okay, that will be it. Have a good day.